Hey, Lisa.
How are you?
Where do you want me?
I think you're right there.
No, my laptop and my desktop.
Well, you're with the rest of them.
Yes. And I have a tablet also. Back a separate email, the Hotmail.
It's
Outlook
on.
email.
It's off, we see the empty container and start in audio. So we're thinking. Okay. how we-
Wind our fingers.
So we saw the key box that was. We're sitting out there and we see it. Little tiny guy, literally. Put his finger on it, put the every guy on the looking back at it. Oh, that didn't.
You did not just take it.
Hey, Bob. Good morning. Good afternoon.
All Matt, all audio is on and filming. Just so you
I have seen that box out there. I've not seen it get anywhere near it.
There was nobody else out there. He was like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And you know what? He's a lot skinnier than me.
Take your mask off when you speak. Take your mask off when you talk to the microphone.
I know.
I'm not clicking on anything these days. So we can go into executive session to discuss the disposition of properties. Yeah, I made a, yeah, I made a cheat sheet. Yes, right there. Purposes, and yes.
We don't turn them off.
Test. Yeah, mine is. Mine's on.
Okay, so they're related to the contract negotiation. One of them.
Yeah,
Can we go into executive session or not? Yes.
Okay.
Property is allowed to be closed. Cool beans?
Yes. Exclamation. Huh? All the other, yeah, I can hear it. I can hear it back here.
I wasn't going into a lot of detail on the Pittsburgh committee about the bid process. I saw that in your. List too.
But that's the first one that's over. Oh, I see.
Ready, TR for review. Okay, so not tonight. No, not tonight. Right. Works for me.
I don't have enough of those.
You see this guy? Yeah.
Thank you.
My new Outlook's freaking out because it recognizes a new Wi-Fi network. I'm scared to click on everything.
Are you liking the outlook?
Yeah, it's fine now. I got it on my desktop. It's much more accessible.
We found a previous discussion on how we.
In the minutes, last one, it said.
Yeah, I saw that part.
The minister came and asked for something, it said the council.
All right. We'll just go.
Maybe if I had a nameplate, you would.
All right, I think I got, huh? I got 7 o'clock.
I have 7 o'clock.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna call this meeting, the Onancock Town Council meeting to order. Lisa, make the roll, please.
Mayor Foskey,
Present.
Councilmember Bloxham,
Here.
Councilmember Marino,
Here.
Councilmember Krause,
Here.
Councilmember Berger,
Here.
Councilmember Oswald.
Present.
All members are present, and we have a quorum, sir.
All right, pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Couple comments before we start the meeting. We have a public hearing tonight, and it's because of the COVID. Some people are uncomfortable still coming to meetings, so if anybody's watching this on our streaming channel during the public hearing for the Airbnb, you can call in to me personally at 710-1995 if you have like a comment. We'll hold it, we'll wait a couple minutes after the public comments here if anybody wants to call. And hopefully we can, if you're not here, you can make a comment. Does anybody have any, we got a lot of people here, anybody upcoming events they want to announce with the, since a lot of people are probably going to leave after the public hearing. We got the hearing coming up at the court for, what's that, on Tuesday?
It's on Friday.
On Friday, yeah. Okay. That's, at the, what's that, 10 o'clock or something?
9:30.
9:30, the Hampton Road Sanitation District petition to, for the Eastern Shore to be part of their district is coming up at our district court at 9:30 on Friday. If you it's a public comment time, I think, public. I don't know how many people they're going to allow in there. All right. So the first item on the agenda is the consideration and approval of meetings from August 24th, 2020. Do we have everybody have a reading? Do we have a motion to accept the minutes?
I move that we accept the minutes as written.
Second,
I second it.
any discussion on that? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. All right, the the second item is the public, is town council public hearing for a special use permit, 7 Main Street. I'm now going to open the public hearing. Matt, take this one.
Sure. We had an application from Sisters 9 LLC and requested that the tax map 85A1-10-50, which is located at 7 Ames Street, have a special use permit authorizing it to become a homestay or Airbnb in sort of colloquial language. From a zoning point of view, it's my recommendation because it meets all the criterion in the zoning requirements that it be approved by council. I did speak with the owner and we put a couple of conditions or restrictions in the motion that's included in your materials. Those would be that there would be a maximum of 6 guests because there are 3 bedrooms, that they would occupy no more than 6 guests at any one time. And the owner understands that ample parking should be provided in the driveway for up to 3 vehicles, and that no parking is allowed on the front lawn or in the street on either side of Ames Street. Given those restrictions and given the fact that the zoning meets the criterion listed in our code, it's my recommendation that you approve.
Mr. Kirkpatrick, I think you're here. Tom, you want to make a comment about anything?
No.
Okay. All right. I've gotten, we have several people have not been able to, or are not able to attend this public hearing, and traditionally we read letters that they have submitted to the council. And I have 2 letters here I'm going to read. One of them's a little bit longer. I've edited it somewhat. This letter is from Brian Stewart, and I think he lives at 9 Main Street. I had hoped to attend the town council meeting on Monday, September 28th, but I had a prior commitment in Richmond. As the homeowner and part-time resident of 9 Main Street, the property next door to the applicant's property, I'm writing to offer my input on the subject application for an Airbnb. My wife Laura and I purchased our home in Onancock in 2004. Since that time, 7 Main Street has been a rental property and a blight in the otherwise tidy non-prospect neighborhood. Following are a few examples. The most recent tenant had at least 4 or 5 cars and trucks, and there were often so many vehicles parked at random angles on the yard and driveway that it looked more like a used car lot than a home. Repair work on vehicles was routinely performed in the front yard with open hoods and car parks left in the grass. The lawn also contained patio furniture and a gas grill. The tenant helped himself to my Adirondack chairs when we were gone for an extended period of time. Number 2, prior to that, the home was rented to a group of people who had 2 pet monkeys and a slightly large monkey cage that sat on the rear deck of the home. Cars were routinely parked on the yard perpendicular to the street. A few years before that, the Kirkbacks rented the property to a large number of migrant workers. When I and other neighbors complained, we were told that they had rented only to 4 people. However, we observed approximately 12 beds being moved into the home. I remember observing the home one Sunday morning and lost count of the number of people coming and going. Until recently, the front porch looked as though it was going to cave in. Even now, the structural integrity appears highly questionable. Walk across the deck, and you'll probably agree that it feels more like a trampoline. At one point, my wife and I nicknamed the home the birdhouse because there were scores of noisy birds living under the siding of the home. Additionally, lawn maintenance is often ignored until the grass is unsightly. Mount Prospect is a great neighborhood. I'm not generally against Airbnbs or traditional rentals, but I oppose rentals by those who have demonstrated so little care for their property and the community. Such is the case with the owners of 7 Main Street. I therefore ask that the town council deny this application. Best regards, Brian Stewart. The second letter is from Greg Feldhausen, owner of 5 Main Street. Dear Mr. Spuck, it has recently come to the attention of myself and other residents in Mount Prospect that the owners of 7 Main Street have applied for a permit to establish an Airbnb at this address. I wish to express my firm and clear opposition to this matter. My wife and I purchased 5 Main Street in 2015 and have done extensive renovations of the dwelling with the intention of retiring to Onancock. During that time, we have the unfortunate experience of observing many bizarre and unusual events perpetrated by the individuals renting 7 Ames. They have included, but are not limited to the following: monkeys living as pets in the home, public drunkenness, removing lawn furniture from 9 Ames to use as their own, clothing being thrown from an upstairs window on numerous occasions and left on the ground for days, unattended open campfires, unpermitted parking in the driveways of both 5 and Ames, as well as on their front lawn, call, surveillance, and inspections by both state troopers and local law enforcement. I have been advised that the residence is unsafe to occupy. It has numerous structural issues that pose an immediate threat to occupants. Mold is pervasive. The yard has not been maintained. In short, it is more than an eyesore. The town council should exercise its right to inspect the residence before any permits are issued. It should also make clear stipulations as to corrections that are needed. The need for more broad regulations may also be necessary. Thank you in advance for your efforts. Sincerely, Craig Feldhausen. I'm now going to open up the for public comment. People in the audience, anybody have any comment about this? State your name and come up to the podium, please.
Sure. Yeah, my name's Desant.
I have to click on it. Hold on, I'm coming.
I think it is.
Don't worry.
Okay. Yes, my name's Robert Roberts. I'm here with my wife Stephanie. We live at 13 Main Street, which is 3 houses down. We've only been here maybe a year and a half now. And during that time, as mentioned in these letters, it's pretty obvious that the owner does not take any supervision of the people renting the property. As mentioned in the letter, cars are left every which way. I'm not even sure if all the cars were properly registered as far as being, running. But as he left, the one vehicle was literally towed away. that vehicle was pushed one time, just barely off the road on the opposite side. So it's obvious to me the owner does not take any ownership as far as monitoring what's going on at the property when it's being built. So Airbnbs are great. This is a cool little town. It's great for business. I see that. But to me, if it's going to be an Airbnb, the owner should be living on the property. You have a built-in chaperone, someone that's going to supervise, monitor real time what is going on at the property. You don't just stick it to the neighbors to live with what's going on there, and then, you know, have days delay as far as any action being taken. And if it's an Airbnb, people could be coming in, leaving in a matter of days before a problem could be corrected. So it's my opinion, if you're going to do an Airbnb, the owner has to be on the premises to monitor what is going on. And that's my comments.
Anybody else have a public comment about this application? Okay, council,
I do.
oh, I'm sorry, okay.
We received a drawing, and I don't know if Matt, if you did this.
You need your name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Patsy Feldhausen, 5 Ames Street, Onancock. What concerns me, and I share Bob's opinion that Airbnbs are fine, but Matt, you are in a business that, and there are several other places in town that are in business to meet the needs of tourists. And all of those properties receive exquisite attention to detail and care. If that same standard were met, I don't think anyone would have any concerns at all. I received this drawing, and I don't know, did you do this?
No, that came with the application.
Well, what concerns me is indicated on the drawing is parking in the front yard on Ames Street. The other issue is, I think it is required that you have someone on call 24/7, and the number listed on the application is the city police department, who are not responsible in any way for what happens at that property. The owners are never present. The lawn has not been mowed since March, one time this year. I personally have never seen, other than on a TV show, someone opening a window in the upstairs bedroom and literally throwing every article of clothing out the window to sit in the yard for several days. I just would wish and hope that a feeling of care and consideration and respect for the properties within Mount Prospect would be of concern to the owners of that property, and that there was even a modicum of care within that. And that's it.
Thank you. Any council comments? We're going to take this up. The public hearing's still open. Yeah. Any comments out here? All right, I've got council. Does anybody want to make a, first of all, does anybody want to make a comment on the council as a private citizen, outside the council? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing then. Public hearing is now closed. Okay. So we're now going to take up the issue of the granting a special use permit. So council comments?
Yes, I have one.
Okay.
I have a question and a couple comments. If this property is approved for a 3 weeks maximum rental, or 6 weeks, which is what they applied for. And as I understand it, as long as they pay their business license and their transient occupancy tax and things like that, during that time, can the owners decide they want to rent it indefinitely and put any number of people in the house? It is not just exclusively an Airbnb as they've applied.
The restrictions state that they cannot rent individual rooms.
Right.
So if it were a long-term rental, it couldn't be a long-term rental and an Airbnb because that would be renting out individual rooms. So
how-
that's in town code. That's not,
I didn't find anywhere. How would the owners, they would decide, we no longer want an Airbnb, we want to rent it out indefinitely, and we can put as many people in that house as we want to, 10, 15, 20, whatever.
Oh, there's no.
Well,
Well,
that's what I'm asking. There's nothing in code that says
no,
that.
there's a health department thing, but it's pretty, you know,
It only comes to the floor if there's a complaint.
Right.
And there's no one going over there and inspecting how many people are living in the house.
We're
My
not-
question is,
you know.
my question is, that owners can decide that it is no longer an Airbnb, like on Monday, and Tuesday they could rent it as a rental.
yes.
Okay. In the code, it says provision for adjoining property with a buffer or shield from view of the proposed use and or structure. What exactly would we expect there
I don't know exactly where you read.
under special use? Special use permits,
I didn't know.
Is it under the homestay
section
section?
24-94.
I think the homestay is,
Yes, it's section 24-94, page 229. Section D. Provision for adjoining property with a buffer or shield from view of the proposed use. and
I don't believe
structure.
that's being considered in the homestay application. You have to consider the homestay code.
It's under procedures. Conditions and bonds. Well, I'll go on. But I'm really concerned that we let adjoining owners know with the 5-day certified deal that their property next to them, adjacent to them, is being considered for homestead.
We did.
And I'm not saying you didn't.
Right, well, that's why they're all
concerned
here.
that we all are clear on that. Okay.
My question is, I think that there's two paths here. There's the regulatory path, which it sounds like they meet based upon how our code and ordinances are. And then there is also the path that speaks to our community. And that's the path that I have questions on, because it seems that if we have a dwelling that is more than anecdotally not up to what we might consider code or the standard that we would like to see our residences within this community, and we have neighbors that are saying, please don't do this, then how do we make this right? How do we do the right thing here? Because I have a bird's eye view, I guess I'm speaking as a citizen, I have a bird's eye view down the creek of this home. And you're right, there are cars parked in the front yard, there's stuff, I mean, and the idea of turning that into a short-term rental experience, to me, does not seem logical in terms of how we picture Onancock, how we want Onancock to be. So how do we as a council make the right choice here?
Well, I think we need to have some, some definite reasons for why you're opposed to it. To me, the one that comes to the forefront is the parking.
Is the one, I'm sorry.
The parking is a problem. I looked at it today, the driveway is right now, it's right on top of the next door neighbors. And the parking that's listed on the street there is pretty much non-existent. People come around that corner. We've had one bad accident where somebody stopped talking to a neighbor and somebody came around, didn't see him and whacked them. So I think the parking is an issue for Airbnb. People come in late. It's not a conducive area for parking. I think that the comments from the neighbors that our code does not specify that the owner of an Airbnb has to live in the building, but it does say that the owner needs to be responsible for what's going on, and there seems to be problems with that in the past. So that's an issue that certainly. But there are two reasons for me that
The number one thing that comes to mind to me is that our town code says that every homeowner and every home is entitled to peace and quiet. They are entitled to being able to live comfortably within their residence. And I'm thinking there were B&B, B&Bs came to question and were denied because they would interfere with the peace and quiet of a homeowner. And I think first and foremost is that our permanent residents should be given priority here. And I think that an Airbnb in this narrow space is not really what we're looking for. I mean, if there was any, I can't even imagine 3 cars parked in a line, how anybody would get in and out. So how can you get in and out safely? And how can you get in and out quietly without banging, 4 cars going on? So I think that it would interfere with the noise, with the peace and quiet that we require in our ordinances.
Any other comments?
I would just like to say, I think Catherine had a very, get my act together here. Catherine's point, I think, was well made. You've got the code issue, but then you've got the aesthetic issue and how the neighbors feel. In the year and a half that we've had the Airbnb ordinance or the homestay ordinance, I can only remember one other time where a neighbor had a concern and it was over a shared driveway and they were able to work that out. I think the fact that, 3 neighbors who are immediate, 2 on each side and 1 just down the street have concerns we have to take into consideration. My personal concerns were around the proximity to the neighbors on both sides, because the lots are not large at that point, and also the safety issues around the parking. And, that has been addressed. I also agree with Ms. Feldhausen's point about, I don't believe that the town police should be a contact number for the homestay owner. I think that responsibility falls squarely with the owner to be responsive to any problems or issues with the property.
There was a telephone number added. I think they misread that question.
I added the telephone number after I interviewed the owners.
Right, they didn't understand.
That's,
I guess what I'm sure.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
All right, any other discussion? If not, then we have a motion from the council one way or another.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we deny the application for a special use permit that allows 7 names to be used as a homestay property for the reasons detailed in the minutes of tonight's meeting.
Second motion.
Discussion? All in favor? I have a voice vote on this, please. Roll call.
Councilmember Blossom,
Aye.
Councilmember Moreno.
Aye.
Councilmember Krause,
Aye.
Councilmember Berger,
Aye.
Councilmember Oswald.
Aye.
All right, thank you. It's unanimous. Thank you for your input. All right, I didn't get any comments from the listening, so.
Oh, okay.
Let it call. Hopefully it's working. All right, the next public business is the approved appropriation of the second CARES Act funding. Again.
Thank you. In the last meeting, we were notified, or prior to the last council meeting, we were notified that there would be a second tranche of CARES Act. I brought forward a recommendation of appropriation. Council discussed, made a recommendation that obviously I rolled into this plan. So my request is that council grant the appropriation based on the presentation made in tonight's materials.
I want to go over that. Or?
We had covered it last month for informational purposes. Those of us who were here got a detailed explanation.
Anybody have any comments?
I guess the only comment, Matt, is can you help us understand again about the upstairs and how all that is
Sure.
developed?
One of the ways that Many small communities are trying to help other aspects of the communities to make public space available for public education community colleges. With the distancing requirements in many of our schools, they don't have the space that they would need for specials, for other things. So what we had contemplated and approached our school system and our community college was, if we had space upstairs that was made available to you, would you find that helpful in implementing your education plan? And without failure, they said yes. And in order to do that, we've got to make some renovations and some changes upstairs. Primarily, this is related to electrical service. So we need to upgrade the electrical service. We already have the Wi-Fi. That would allow us to entertain them. Now, Joy had asked a question very specifically about handicap accessibility. Right now, it would not need to be because the building is not compliant, but I have an application out to FEMA that does specifically request that monies for that purpose. And I would love to see that happen. So it's an additional application, not included in this.
That money, the handicap access is not coming from the CARES.
That is correct. It is not.
Oh.
I just wanted to make sure that we understood that there was a question from a council member on the table, and that I've addressed that in an application for other funds, from other funds.
Matt, have we received many applications for the next round of the small business grant?
We haven't distributed that because until you approve the criterion for tonight, that grant is not made public.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept this, what to do with this CARES fund?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the appropriation of the second distribution of the CARES Act fund as detailed in the materials for the evening's regular meeting, item 4B on the agenda.
Second? Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Council discussion, first item is to consider the process of review and possibly alter town code.
If I can just preface this, I put a schedule in your materials that, as I read them as an adult person, I found it incredibly hard to read. So I put another packet in another sheet at your desk tonight that looks like this. It should be the last page of your staple. It says exactly the same words as that really difficult one, but I think it might be a little easier to understand. Do you have it, Mavis?
I don't think so either.
Yeah, so
Last page of the motions.
Yeah.
Last page of the motions?
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
You got it?
I can see it through the back. Oh, you're right. No, it's on the motion.
It's on the motion sheet that you had at your desk tonight.
It's on the back of that. No, you don't have to do it.
Oh.
Mavis, do you want this one? So after last meeting, I realized that it probably made more sense for us to talking about code rather than sort of launching into a program to change code. So after last month, what we had talked about was in month 1, having council review the existing code and make comment on any changes you might want to see. Then in the next month, we would have a public hearing where our public can come in and voice concerns, questions, or make comments on, again, the existing code. Then in month 3, we would combine your comments with public comments into a proposed new code that at that time council could review. If at that point it's approved and you think it's worth moving forward, in the next month you would actually vote on it, and then you would have changed code. Yes, Mindy. That's fine.
Is this a 3-month process for the whole book?
Well, you have to think about, no, not the whole book. The whole book, which by the way, you should know, I just got the updated Unicode book today. It's 275 pages long. So what we're looking to do is code by code, and obviously we won't need to review or to comment on every code. But there are codes that since I've joined in this position, I realize they're coming up a lot. And there are times when enhancements to the code or more details would actually be helpful to manage. And that's why I picked certain codes to start with. Animals and fowl, abandoned vehicles, nuisance, things for grass. So what I want to be able to do is first of all, have you review the existing code, talk a little bit about why some of those items might be problematic, or suggest enhancements that might make it a little easier to manage. At that point, then you can have the conversation. Then we have public comment. Then we look at it together and say, yes, this looks like it's ready. Then we vote. So it's one code at a time, one section at a time if you want. And then the schedule that I have here is just going over the next few months saying, this is what we would discuss in this one. Then we would have the public forum on this public hearing on the next month. Then we would have the final review. Then we would have the vote.
So you see this as an 8-month process?
Probably more than that.
Oh, I think it's a perpetual process because I think that as we grow and as we have new experiences in town, I think that we're going to need to revise code as the town grows and as the town changes. So,
but the point is that this code hasn't been updated in a very long time, and there's a lot of misinformation or things that don't apply anymore. But just to get past that is what I'm talking about. It's like an 8-month process.
at least. Oh, yeah.
Well, but what I'm thinking is that we do this in work session. Is that what you're saying? And
No.
that's what, no work session?
I don't work,
We're
the
taking
mayor,
council time to do that. Why don't we do it in work session?
whether you take the meeting time in public or whether you take the time as a work session, you're still taking the time.
I want to take the time. I want to take the time, but I don't want to take their time while we're doing all of
It's
that.
still a public meeting.
It's still a public meeting. People may attend if they so choose. But this, we hashed out 3 little sections last month and went on for days.
What now?
That's the point.
Yeah, the last time we tried, work sessions are sometimes a burden on people. We're here for, if you come here for, an hour and a half, you can stay another hour for this. It's preferable to people rather than come in at a separate time of the work session. So that's why I think we should try it this way. If it's not working, then we'll go to a work session. If we have 8 more. But you're right. Some of these might need a lot more time.
Right.
We don't know, but I don't know. So let's try this first and it's done working. We'll try plan B.
And then over the next, I'm going to say couple of weeks, but I got the document today from Unicode with all the updated charts of account or table of contents and all the updated code. Once I have a chance to print that and distribute it, if you see a code that you want to talk about, this is just a recommendation. It doesn't have to be this. You can add whatever you want to it, and then we can start that code review. So that's where I want to say this is just an idea. If you feel like there's a code that you want to address, then let's put it on the calendar and let's start the process to review and change.
All right, so everybody, willing to try this the next couple meetings, see what happens. And if we're here forever and people don't want to do it, we'll try something else.
Fair enough.
Last time I did a couple, work sessions when I first came on as mayor, people talk about that. And we had 1 month, the first couple of months, I was only had 3 meetings or 4 meetings in 1 month.
But council was originally scheduled, and even in your bylaws, that you are scheduled for 2 meetings a month, and that's never been changed.
Right. Well, that would be fixed. Well, yeah, well, let's try this and then we'll, sound like, both of us are in favor of trying this first. Okay. All right. Consider the water source and cost of town and building. Explain that one further.
Yeah. So last time we had come forward and there was a question on, let me back up. If you remember, we received a grant from the forestry department that allows us to do plantings at the Blacksmith shop, right? That is a property that the town owns, and obviously there's an activity on it, a nonprofit that operates on it. We own the property. We got the grant that said we're going to put these trees in, and we've got 35 plantings that are scheduled to go in. The question was through tree board, how are we going to take care of these? How are we going to water them in? We don't have any water on the property. So then the question said, well, we can use town water or we can have them dig a well. Well, them is us because it's our property. So we were either going to dig a well or we were going to provide town water. One of our volunteers went and talked to all of the well drilling companies to find out if they'd be willing to throw a bone or do a discount or something like that. And that didn't exist. So it was going to be in excess of $4,000 to drill a well. When I talked to our manager of the DPW, Department of Public Works, he said, you know what? There used to be a house there way back in the day. Let me see if the house actually had water service. So he went out and found that there was indeed water service to the house that doesn't exist anymore, but the water was still there. So I asked him to dig it up and make it a functioning water meter. But because we hadn't decided, when I say we, you hadn't decided how or if we would charge the nonprofit for the water use, I have a lock on the meter. So we have water, we have a source of water, the plantings are scheduled and they're going to be arriving, but how we charge, if we charge, that's the purpose of this council discussion.
So you're saying there is town water available on the property?
Yes.
to use for the plant?
Yes, right now.
Give us a rundown on what other town property pays for their water.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. Really, the one property that you should probably be most familiar with is the school. That would be town property that has another nonprofit organization working on it or operating on it.
Just
They
like
have a
Brown.
lease that allows for them to have 43,100 gallons of water per cycle. Per cycle or per month?
What cycle is quarterly back then?
Quarterly back then. To be straight up honest, we don't monitor the use of the water at the school unless it gets exorbitant, which I think we all remember that incident. So they haven't gotten a water bill. So have we set precedent by having a lease where there is a limit on the use? Yes, but we don't monitor the water meter and we don't provide it. We don't send them a bill.
We do monitor the meter.
We do monitor, well, we monitor the meter because that's how we found out that there was that horrible leak. Right.
We do that. The other property that would be the Little League.
Yes.
I'm sorry, the other property would be the Little League field, town-owned property, but they do pay for their water.
At the town rate.
They do,
Yes.
but they don't pay for sewer.
Is that town property?
Yes, it
Yes.
is.
I'm sorry, Lisa,
They do not pay for sewer,
they pay for town water.
just water.
I think though that there's a bit of a difference between the outlaw property and the other two that we've discussed, given the fact that even though the Samuel D. Outlaw Museum is a 501c3, and I know because I set it up, the town are the members of the LLC, of the corporation. Town members, the town manager, myself are directors. So it is not being treated as a leased property as the other two are, in my opinion.
That's a good point.
So there's the Little League.
You know, I think, well, it's $1 for the free lease. Do we have a contract? We don't have a contract. Do we?
I think we do somewhere
With them?
A little
with
bit.
Little League.
How much do they pay, by the any idea?
They've never given us money for, are you talking about the water or for the lease?
The water.
Oh, I'd have to look
They
at theirs.
they drilled a well too. or
I
not?
believe they have a well for irrigation. but
Yeah,
I
so they
don't
don't use
know
much
about
water.
that.
except for the,
The
It's
drinking
when they're in
fountains are
season.
there.
But,
Just when they're in season usually.
yeah, it's just, they have a toilet. And a snack shop, yeah. And the other, well, the fire department is, they get free water.
But that's not town property anymore.
That's not town property.
I know, yeah. And the armory, correct?
They own that thing.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're looking at.
We are looking at those two specifically.
Yeah, but this is an issue about the. All right, so, I mean, I don't, we council, we need to vote on this to let them.
I don't know if we need a vote or not, or just a decision, because right now I'm not looking for policy, I'm just looking for guidance on whether or not we read the meter and charge that nonprofit, or whether or not this is considered town property, like the gazebo park has it has a watering well that's attached to town water, but we obviously don't charge ourselves for it because we're us.
How often would the water be used anyway? That's the big
Actually
issue.
have that information. I met with them this morning.
The water the trees and during the growing season, 1 year to get the plants established is the norm from my garden.
Yeah.
So
It's not a big deal.
once they are established, then the water, nature basically takes care of itself. I have a question though. You said how many trees are going in there to be a forest?
It's a row of hedges. There are 30 some type of wax myrtles,
Yeah.
and then 5 small sycamores.
Small now or small?
Small now, and the plan is that there are trees currently on the property that these would age out as those die. So there would be.
It's gonna be a hedge to sort of be a buffer between the perimeter of the outlaw museum property and then the building on the other side. Yeah.
We worked there last year, and how much debris we took down from those trees.
I serve on the San Juan Outlaw Board with many members of this community who have done a lot of work there and put in many hours. And I personally have no problem with supplying them with the water to make the plants. I don't think they're going to be using water on a regular basis. There is no water in the museum. And it is a town property. It's a museum.
All right, well, I think we're at agreement on this. Any more comments?
No, that was actually perfectly helpful. So what I'm hearing is that we're just going to allow them to maintain these plants in a healthy way and move on with life. Great. Thank you.
All right. Okay, well, thank you. All right. Public comment? Anybody have any public comment about anything outside of what we talked about, or any comments at all? Can you come up and tell us who you are, please?
Hello.
Yeah.
My name is Priscilla Hart. I live at 21 Market Street. While we're talking about water, I have a request. On September 17th, one of the hydrants was open and it affected certain homes. And I don't think there were too many. I'm not sure the number, but mine was one of them. And had I known that was going to happen, I would have done things differently that day. So I'm requesting that we get some sort of notice before the town does their regular maintenance and flushes the hydrant, so that I don't have to day groundwater or do things that I didn't have to do that day. I think that would be extremely helpful. I imagine that Public Works or the town or whoever it is knows when these things are scheduled and who will affect. Is that a good assumption?
I understand this was not a routine.
Right. I mean, I'm happy to speak on this if you like.
Great, I'm finished.
Sure, no worries. If you're not, please keep going. But there was a sewer backup down near the wharf, and one of the tools they try to use to clear that line is to jet water through it. So they access the hydrant to jet water through the sewer line that was clogged. That's what stirred up the water, that it was not a scheduled hydrant flush. Now, since this time, I have reached out to the fire department. They do flushings twice a year. I've asked them to give me notice of up to 6 days so that we can notify our residents. I've also, in one of the letters that council is going to talk about here in a minute, I'm asking that we get communication, whether it's email or cell numbers, so that we can email or text in the case of an emergency like this. We had no way to communicate with anyone other than walking up and banging on doors.
That wouldn't work. There
But
was
you-
somebody sitting in the
Well,
truck.
that's understandable for those houses in immediate neighborhoods, but this was over 200 houses that this affected, because it was the entire side of the town that got impacted by this. So it wasn't just one
Which
line,
side of the
it was
town,
from,
down by towards the ward, or?
yeah, from the wharf all the way up through, we got calls all the way up to a high number on Market Street.
Okay.
So just so you know, this was an expansive problem. It was an emergency. It wasn't scheduled. But now we're taking steps to get contact information so that we can send out when emergencies like this happen. And I reached out for those scheduled hydrant flushings so that we can give a lot of notice. And whether that's with the, yeah. So I heard you and I appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, I had talked with Matt after this happened, that we do have a hard time contacting residents, and I think we're gonna try to come up with some kind of directory, and we're probably gonna try to get OBCA or something to help us. We're probably gonna have to go around and knock on every door in town, get volunteers, to get emails and possibly cell phones, because we don't have contact information. We have an emergency contact system through the county, but we're not allowed to use that for a water line or something like that. So I think if we can get a good list of contact emails, we can have some kind of system where we can email people in a certain area or something.
Right.
But that's gonna be, we're gonna have to work on that, because right now we don't have that. No,
I thought we established
that was
right after that red.
that was just a voluntary thing that people wanted to sign up. If you didn't sign up, we don't have it. We have landlines, but we can't use it for this situation.
Okay, but how well did that sign up work?
Not well, I don't think.
Not at all?
No.
Well, there's a place on the website, I
Yeah.
noticed,
Yeah, but
where,
Code red.
No,
It's
that's
an
the
alert.
county.
something
That's
like
the
that.
county, that's the
No,
county.
there's something on the town website.
Right.
Yeah, but that's to sign up for the county.
Sign up, But no, there was a town sign up as well.
That was just to opt into the county system, but the town has a website.
I know.
That town has a list of people who want to be notified, but it's not complete, and it's only voluntary. And so we,
Mr. Mayor, when we were discussing the problem with the rabbit animals,
yeah,
the administrator for the Code Red Alert
right,
came and spoke to us,
right,
and he said that we could issue a Nancock specific.
yes. But that, we're not allowed to do that for a water tank, something
We
like that.
don't, are we sure about
Yes, yeah, we're not, that's only, and plus he only can.
that? Because
only
he
can
made
hit-
it sound like we could do it for anything.
No, the police chief said we're not, and we only can do it for landlines and people that have opted in to cell lines, or we don't, there's no emails and all of that. So it's kind of specific, and if you didn't opt in, if you don't have a landline anymore, you didn't opt into the county system with your cell phone, we can't contact you. So that's a somewhat of a, we need our own system, we need a good email address is what we need. We're gonna try
I
to get that.
inputted my email on the town website.
Right.
I also signed up for Code Red separate.
Yeah, well, right now, the only thing we're using the email is just what to say, we have meeting notifications, but we're gonna try to use this database to contact people, just another tool, so that we don't have this problem in the future.
Thank you.
And the other problem is that, if there's a big fire somewhere, that's gonna happen, we can't control that, and when they open up those hydrants, we have 100 years, I don't know how old some of these water lines are, but they're old. And when they open up a hydrant to fight a fire, believe me, we've had that problem in the past. Hopefully, we'll never have fires. That is an option. Problem. Okay,
Thanks, Priscilla.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other public comment about anything?
Yes, I have two thank you
Okay.
instead of yesterday your case. I like, Mr. Mayor and the council, I'd like to thank you for the decision you just made on the outlaw. Or the site there, so that's a bad decision, I think. Secondly, I'd like to thank you for finally, after about 5 years, finally the sidewalk been fixed on Boundary Avenue and the repairs made on the road. It looks good. Thank you for doing that. It took a long while, but it's finally finished. I will continue to look and continue to doing the good work in the Northeast. Thank you very much.
All right, we're gonna move I'm gonna move mayor's report up in front of committee reports. I don't have too much, got one main issue, but a couple things. We haven't mentioned the main, of course, everyone knows that we were designated as Main Street full affiliate, and my thanks to the Main Street Committee. They worked really hard at that. I think there's a lot of great things that are going to come down the road with that. I attended the Mayor's Institute, the VML thing last week, online thing for about 5 hours, and about 32 mayors were on there, mostly smaller towns. I think we were the smallest. I was the smallest town. I think one had 1,500 people, but mostly talking about COVID. And I think we've kind of gotten our policy on that pretty well. A lot of towns are reporting. Most of the towns are reporting good numbers actually for meals tax and stuff. They were not really affected as much. Some were almost normal, believe it or not. A couple of towns, Christiansburg and Bradford, universities that were severely hit. They're having a real problem. Williamsburg is having some problems as well. But I think we're all battling that, and it was a good conference. And I think the VML is going to be virtual coming up sometime. If you guys want to, I think it's only like $25 to do it now. If you want to do it, it's worth listen to it for a while. Sometimes I do it. And the other item is, unfortunately, as many of you council knows, that Sharika Riley has resigned her position on town council. I think it's just she has too many work commitments. It was just too much for her, and so she has resigned about 3 weeks ago or so. So we now have an opening on council. Our policy is that we do not have special elections. We appoint someone until the next election comes up. So this person would be serving until about a year and 3/4 or something, sorting out your term that. So she's come up for election. So we need to appoint somebody, and I'm going to open up. We've had several people interested, and I think they're well known to the council, and turn it over to the council. I'd like to get somebody appointed tonight. I think names are just going on my head. Carol Council is still interested. Double Gillespie. Just those two. I talked about both of us. I think all of you had conversations with Robert about any secret.
Shall I nominate it, or do you have a discussion?
I'm just, let's nominate somebody in the discussion.
I'd like to nominate Thelma Gillespie if she is willing to serve for this open position on council.
Do we have a second on that? Any discussion at all?
Carol interested or?
Yes,
Not
she is interested.
Or she wants to,
She's interested.
unlike us.
No, she was interested last time, but she bowed out. Right now, she has not indicated that she's interested yet. All right, then, all votes, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we got 4 opposed.
I'm not really opposed, I'm so opposed.
Okay, that's fine. So you what are you going to vote? You got to stay.
I'll stay.
Okay, all right, so 4, yeah, okay, all right. Let's, I don't have any other big things about anything else, so I guess we go on committee reports. HRSD.
Yes, I guess we were calling it the negotiations committee, had its inaugural meeting on Friday, the 18th of this month. We talked about a negotiation strategy, assuming the petitions are ruled on favorably on Friday. I think we plan to discuss that strategy more in closed session since they do involve contract negotiations. The other item that we took up was evaluating 3 proposals for legal services that we had solicited and received. The first firm that we approached was Hefty Wiley Gore out of Richmond. They were recommended to us by both the VML, and also I have a good friend who's an Onancock resident, a former Onancock resident, Sands Anderson, who recommended that firm. They have a pretty broad practice, probably specialize in municipal work more than anything else. But I think it was the view of the committee that their experience level was not on the same plane as the other two firms that we approached. From a cost standpoint, they had indicated a flat rate of $50,000. However, they added this nebulous addition to that they would charge $350 an hour for work over and above their intended scope, which was undefined. So to me, that left pretty big unknown for us in terms of what the ultimate cost could be. The second firm that we approached was Gephardt Smith, which is located in Baltimore, Maryland. They are probably the premier firm in the Baltimore market. I personally have dealt with them since 1995 and can speak for their legal prowess and acumen. They would assign a team to the town that is comprised of 5 or 6 individual attorneys, billing anywhere from a high of $630 an hour to a low of $295 an hour. They are extremely experienced in business-related issues, but I think, again, the committee decided that their municipal experience was not as deep as we would like, given the fact that we are a municipality and HRSD is quasi-governmental. That brings me to the third firm that we received a proposal from, and that is Pender & Coward, which is located in Virginia Beach. They are actually one of the oldest law firms in the state of Virginia, founded in 1895. The partner who would be assigned to us is a gentleman by the name of Rick Matthews, who I do know personally, known him since 2008, and dealt with him on a number of complex legal issues from 2009 to 2014. Rick was the legal counsel for the Virginia Beach Department of Public Utilities. He has negotiated the sale of 2 private sewer companies that were subsequently incorporated into the Virginia Beach system. He's currently representing a client in Western Tidewater that's selling its water system to a private entity. And for what it may be worth, he successfully sued HRSD all the way to Virginia Supreme Court
And one.
and won. As I guess a professional courtesy, Pender & Coward has offered to cap their rate at $300 an hour. We do hope and will do our best to negotiate with HRSD to have them pick up our legal fees. However, like any other negotiation, neither Matt nor I can tell you that we can do that as we sit here today. And for that reason, what our committee would like to do is ask council to appropriate a sum of up to $25,000 should the town have to cover any of its legal expense related to this upcoming negotiation. I think Matt can speak more to this, but from the performance of the town for the first part of this fiscal year, I think we are of the opinion that the town can cover it in the operating budget without
Out of the water.
Yes. If that is not a possibility, then we do have ample reserves. And I would tell you this is probably the most important negotiation the town has entered into up to this point. Certainly the scale are larger than the negotiation with the county, which we all would say did not work out as smoothly as we would like. And for that reason, our committee recommends that we re-engage Pender & Coward and that the council appropriate up to $25,000 should the town have to absorb any of the legal costs related to the negotiation. I'll be glad to make a motion that in the conflict.
Are you finished with your report?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you want to make that motion?
I will move that the town engage Pender & Coward for the upcoming negotiation with HRSD, and that the town agree to appropriate a sum up to $25,000 for possible legal fees incurred.
Second? Is this in accordance with our procurement, like we're not violating our procurement?
No, because we had free.
Okay, all right, yeah, just want to make sure we're following you. A comment?
question again, I just want to go back to where the funds are coming from. And you said water,
So, and this, Matt, if I step in here. you-
Sure, yeah, we can
I
do
know our water use is up right now, which is, everybody's home and
Exactly.
using water. So that's a plus right now for us, and I don't know whether that sum is enough to cover what you're talking about. But I just want to know where the money's coming from.
The water usage to date has created a surplus in the operating budget, which at this point is unallocated by council. So I think it's Matt's expectation and mine that money would be available for use for any purpose council intends, including legal fees. But if it were to disappear or evaporate, no pun intended, then we do have more than ample reserves in the town to cover the cost of
Okay,
negotiation.
I wanted to go back to that point too, the reserves, because the reserves were there for breakdowns and other things in terms of the equipment, no? That, we keep talking about this Weber, that thing going up, and
So.
wondering whether those reserves were to make sure that we were
So
covered.
there are basically two or more categories of reserves. The reserves to which you're referring are specifically required under the bonds for the sewer plant. And that money is in effect escrowed and not available to us except for catastrophic repairs or major maintenance items that we would have to request of the bondholders. But the town does have separate reserves that are general fund reserves, which I believe we're going to also discuss.
We are going to discuss that as part of the contract negotiation in
Right.
closed session.
Yeah, in open session, what I would tell you is that there are more than adequate reserves if the town were to have to go to the unallocated reserves to pay the cost of the legal. You're welcome.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Bob. Waterfront.
We did meet.
Oh, we did, yes, right.
Waterfront committee met, whenever we met. Matt's gonna talk about the wharf ramp bid process because he's been shepherding that and it's ongoing. The other major conversation we had at the waterfront committee was consideration of a draft policy that Matt and Craig Tanner, our harbor master, have fleshed out that would allow local residents of the town to tie up at the wharf in slips that are not otherwise rented to transient boaters. They put some guidelines in there that make sense. I believe a maximum of 4 hours. Anybody requesting to tie up would need to check in with the harbor master's office and be directed to an unoccupied slip. They would have to provide a cell phone number for contact. And in the event that they were going to be there for more than 4 hours, the time gets away from them, we would assess a nominal charge of, I think, $10.
I think it was $5 an hour. or
$5
something.
an hour or something for anybody wanting to be there longer than the 4 hours that we would offer gratis. I believe Matt's intent is to bring that back as a formal policy next month for council to hopefully consider and approve. But the waterfront committee was unanimously in favor. I think it's the right message to send to the local residents of the town. And it certainly signals that the town is voter friendly and open for business and encourages people to come enjoy our town.
All right, thank you. Any comments about the waterfront? Are you going to comment about the wharf? I mean, I guess the project we already know, the wharf, the ramp.
I was going to do it as part of my.
Okay, that's right.
I just have one question for the waterfront committee. I noticed this past weekend, there were any number of folks in the harbor, more than usual. Was there anything done to promote that, or did that just happen?
I believe that was a club that has visited.
It was the Urbana Yacht Club, and they come every year.
They used to.
Yeah.
And
They
they
had
have
a-
not been for a couple of years. I'm just wondering whether we take that information and move forward with it to market this.
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Part of the-
Because I know that it has not been so in the past.
We have a communication and marketing plan that's been in place. We're capturing a lot of information from all of our customers. We're developing newsletters.
Kind of
and
babyish.
advertising.
Planning Commission.
Planning Commission met on September the 15th. Back to the point of town code review, we had a very fulsome discussion of several town code sections, including trash, weeds, overgrown bushes, and vehicles. Obviously, it presented the opportunity for a lot of discussion because there are intricacies associated with how those codes may be enforced. Admittedly, we haven't enforced a lot of them to date, with the exception of the grass, I believe. But it was, I think, the opinion of Planning Commission that this is a slippery slope that we want to be careful in what we codify as we move forward, but in terms of the code, but also in terms of the guidance that we give to Matt and staff for enforcement. So Matt is going to contact some of the other localities here, some of the other towns, to see how they're handling similar issues in terms of enforcement, and report back to Planning Commission. And obviously that code section will come to council for discussion at some point in the future. But to make this point, there are a lot of rabbit holes you can go down when you start looking at this.
Any questions about Planning Commission? Personnel, we got the strategic planning. We actually have not appointed this committee yet, but that's how to do that tonight.
I have one community member who said, given affirmative. I have another person who, Carol, has said that she'd like to participate, and I think she would be a phenomenal resource for it. I have one other person I've left a voicemail for. It's an uptown business, and I think it would be important to have representation from different parts of our community on this. So I would like to have at least 2 members of council on this. Mr. Mayor, one. I didn't know if there was another council member who would be interested in serving on the strategic planning. That would give us 2 council members, 1 community member who's obviously the Main Street tie-in. We have 1 other community member, and then I'm hoping for a business owner who's uptown. So that I think would give us a good, robust, diverse committee, but I'd like to get another name from council.
Well, not the, you know what happens when you aren't there, you get nominated. Just as an idea. Because,
I think it's a really smart one.
Yeah, because Thelma could certainly represent.
Who are the other people you got?
No, I've got Bob Spock,
Oh,
I've got Carol Tunstall, and I've got, the last person, I hate to share their name publicly before we speak, so let me table that one.
So do you want to vote on these people tonight and start thinking to add the other?
I think that would be fantastic, so that we can get an agenda and a schedule moving forward.
So you got Thelma.
Yes, Thelma.
Okay, so
Welcome aboard.
All right, so the 3 expanding, it looks like Carol Tunstall, myself, Matt, Thelma, and Bob Scott.
Right, and then one more to be
One more
named.
to add it. So can we vote on these 5 right now? All in favor, please?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, all right. Okay, that's it for the, okay, town manager report.
All right, you've got the full written report. I'm gonna run down through some salient points and probably a couple things that I notified you via email that I'd like to get a little further discussion on. The White Oak project behind the theater, you should know that the tree canopy cleaning is going to begin on Monday. I've notified the adjacent property owners that there's going to be a big truck and cleaning taking place. The ramp project, the advertisement has gone out, the bid documents and the bid package have gone out to 4 different contractors. We have this Thursday a pre-bid conference at the wharf where any contractors who have questions about the drawing or the bid pack or want to see the site can come down. The engineer and architect are going to be there. I'll be there. Obviously, Pee will be there, and we'll be able to answer any questions. Final bids are due back in at 3 p.m. sealed on the 8th. We're going to open them in this room. Mr. Mayor is going to be here and he's going to do the opening at 4 p.m. Over the next week, we'll go through reference checks or we'll do the lowest technically qualified bidder. So if somebody bids and they don't meet the requirements or they're not technically qualified, then we would obviously move up to the next lowest bidder who is technically qualified. So that's taking place over the next week. I have two things on the DPW report that are a little bit different. We have the South Street pump station has a generator that is failing. We're going to do all we know how to do to get parts and repairs and things like that because it's obviously part of the pump and collection system for the sewer. I would like to be able to not spend a lot of money on that repair, if at all possible, but you should know that a new generator for the South Street pump station would be a significant budget expense that we're not planning. Just so you know, we're hoping to repair it. We're hoping to do it inexpensively, but I just wanted to tee it up as we know this is coming, and I hope it's small, but if it's not, you've been forewarned. I mentioned earlier the repair on the sewer line near the wharf. They attempted to jet that clog out. They could not. So they rented a camera to scope the line to find out what was happening. And apparently right down near the bend in the road, the terracotta sewer line collapsed on itself. And that's why there's a backup down there. What we're going to do is we have the equipment and the talent and all of that to do this work ourselves. We're going to cut a 3 by 8 foot hole in the road. We're going to access that. We're going to repair that 8-foot section of terracotta pipe, and then we're going to obviously refill the road and get it back to DDOT standards. I've already let every home know that this is happening. But the communication plan, I told them exactly what I just told you. And then Brian is, once he gets the parts in and he knows when he can do the work, weather depending, he's going to put door hangers on every one of their doors to say, here's my personal cell number. Here's when the work's going to take place, because they can't use water in their buildings while this repair is going on, or it's all just going to flood the hole that they did. So that communication is underway. Brian knows exactly what he's doing. So that looks like, if all goes well, Thursday that's going to take place. But we have weather, we have parks that are showing up, that type of thing. So more to follow, but the homeowners that are impacted by this directly are being communicated with directly. Yes.
Is it a one-day?
Yes. Yeah, we're expecting 1 day. In fact, we're only expecting a few hours because we're gonna cut the pavement ahead of time, then we'll dig it out, we'll go down, we'll cut the pipe, we'll put the fittings in, and then we'll fill it. And as long as everything goes well, it shouldn't take but a few hours. But I'm saying that, starting at say 9 o'clock in the morning, we're asking that you don't use water until we come up in your door. Okay, so that's that. Halloween. Trick or treat. CDC has made suggested guidelines for trick or treating, where they're saying they do not recommend that communities participate in trick or treating, any parties or anything like that. So what I did was I wrote a letter in draft form that would come from you folks, that would be mailed U.S. Postal Service, everybody in the community. You have a copy of that letter that was emailed to you, and I put another copy of it in front of you tonight. The question on the table would be, A, is that a letter that you're comfortable sending? And I think the other thing you'll see is the bottom part of that letter, it dovetails with the conversation we had earlier about capturing people's contact information. Because we're spending the money to mail this to all residents, I'd love to be able to see if we can get some information back from them. So if we can get that database starting with cell numbers and email numbers, these mailings cost like about $1 a piece. So I want to make it as productive as possible. So yes, the top part talks about Halloween. that's up for your discussion because the letter's coming from you. The bottom half is sort of a shameful request that we start getting as much of this contact information as we can. Go ahead.
It's a tough one.
It's a really tough
It's
one.
really a tough one because the town doesn't regulate the Halloween, only in that the time frame and the curfew is the only part of it that you do have any real control over. And I've already talked to some parents who are saying their kids are gonna get dressed up. They, you know, this is a big deal for children.
Well, the other thing about Halloween is that in our town, it seems that many people come here that don't live in town. So how do we, I mean, people might still show up, right? Yeah.
Right, but, I mean, you're not gonna put a big sign at the entrance to town, no trick or treating. I'm just thinking if there was some way to create an alternative that would work.
Well, that town was here, was it at the last month?
The minister at the United Methodist Church came and asked us to do that very thing.
Right.
And in our minutes, it said that council agreed that this is something they would like to support.
But
That was prior to the
something they would like
CDC
support,
guidelines.
there was no recommendation. There was nothing that came out of that to say, let's do
Right.
this. So I'm thinking we need to find a let's do this. And it's going to be weather related because Halloween is, you know, always weather related. But if there was a way to ask for community donations of candy, that is bags, the big bags, then create trick or treat bags and the kids parade in costume in front of the HOS. And everybody gets a bag and it's all sanitary and they're in their costumes and they're doing their thing. I think you can find a way because otherwise it's gonna be chaos in town in that people are still going to go trick or treating. So I'm thinking if you do, I'd be willing, you know, like I buy a big bag of candy, you know, every time, so I get some left. But you know, if you made up these bags, what are you gonna do with them? Give them out at the school, let the kids. You're still violating. No. If you're safely going by.
How do you hand the bag to somebody?
Seems like to me you're better off going around to the house and just having them sit on the front porch.
Unless you have a bag set up.
Where's the made bag on your front porch?
Give them.
That's what I'm saying. Always, and people tend to, you don't get 50 kids coming at one time. It's very sporadic. You get two. They're all on the cars. And you know, and they're all jumping out of the cars. They're all, so they're either friends or families that are already, you know, mixing their germs. So.
But if you,
why don't we just
You bring
create
a central location, you can bring everybody together.
I mean, that's, you know,
I mean,
we just,
they're not.
everybody's gonna have a mask on.
They're not, that's Halloween, right? But they're not coming together, you know, if you're allowing the kids to parade past the table with a bag of stuff.
That's
and
not
hand
gonna
them
be
the bag.
together.
Okay. Then,
So what are you gonna do about it?
I don't know, I mean, people are just like that.
Put it on your door, put it on a table on your front porch or something.
Yeah, that's what.
then you're gonna invite trick or treaters.
You're right. Brothers, sit down.
Anybody who doesn't want to invite a trick or treater, just turn the light off. And you don't get any trick or treaters.
Yeah, on one
Like
hand,
you
you
said,
say
we don't have a lot
stuff,
to do with this
and
one
on
way
the
or
other
another.
hand, you say put stuff out.
But we don't have any
Feed
enforcement of this one way
feed
or
the
another.
squirrel.
I think what we're looking for is that this is a suggestion. It won't be enforced. It won't be there's not any policing going on. But I think it's important that the town have an opinion about how we are going to manage Halloween. I know it's a huge deal. And I love the holiday. I really do. Handing out the ones to the little kids and all that. It's just one of the best times of the year. But this is a unique time.
Right.
So if someone chooses to distribute candy, there's obviously nothing that we can't or would do about that. But the town's position is what I'm asking. You know, I mean, obviously, we're not going to enforce a police.
Have you talked to the minister of United Methodist Church?
No, because the CDC guidelines say no trunk or treat.
So you think that's what she was specifically asking for?
I know that's exactly what her words were. So yes.
Right.
Well, just said some type of event.
So you cannot issue a curfew.
No.
If you're not gonna endorse having.
Oh, we can issue a curfew for 6 o'clock and say, you know, we can, but we don't try to do that.
Have you talked to other communities?
What I'm hearing is that they're doing the same thing we are, is that they're suggesting that the community not participate, but there's nothing that they can do to close Halloween. There's no way to do it. So
Gary's doing it enough that this year they're requiring all participants to wear masks and stay 6 feet apart.
right.
Who was that?
Gary's doing it.
The letter is well written, and I think that's really all that we can or should do, is to point out to the residents that the CDC guidance is out there. At the end of the day, it's every parent's decision as whether they're being tricked or treated, as to whether or not they participate. But to me, I think this letter makes sense.
The trigger to the holiday. I don't know what to do. I don't want to say to the parents, no, and then put my light on and say, come trick or treat. You know, I don't know.
I have a question about the last sentence of the second paragraph. These recent CDC guidelines will help.
Yeah, where's the kind
Is that going to be included with this letter?
No, I think the letter says, hold on,
I know.
I think I gave my copy of the letter away. Oh, here it is. Hold on. I got it. Onancock is among the least impacted by COVID-19, and we want to remain that way. These recent CDC guidelines will help us remain that way. I mean, again, if you want to write it again or present it differently, this is going over your name, not mine.
Yeah.
Or
I would mention that's something that the CDC has asked us not to do. If we're unclear about that.
by following recent CDC guidelines.
And what did the guidelines say? I've not looked. I don't know.
It says no trick or treating, no trunk or treating, no gatherings, no parties, no, I mean, it really is that. Yes, it is that specific. And I copied it, door-to-door trick or treating should be avoided. This includes trunk or treats, neighborhood gatherings, parties, hay rides, or other gatherings. I copied that from the CDC guidelines because obviously hay rides aren't a thing here.
I think it's great.
I just say if the CDC is recommended.
Right.
I would add that.
I take out the.
Yeah, that's a good.
I just find that a little shallow.
Well, I agree with you, and normally I'm exactly that way. I just wanted to make sure it was
Okay.
clear. I don't have any problem. This is your letter, not mine,
Don't get
so
it without-
I can remove the underline and I can be more clear about the guidelines that CDC is recommending.
But basically it is. in the-
Yeah, I don't want to talk
Put
about
your light
that.
on, you leave your light off.
Right.
Parents decide if you want to put the kids to bed or not.
Yeah, and I think it's Ray's idea that if you want to put something on your front porch, and people want to come by, that to me is pretty phenomenal. You're not going to expose anybody with that, yeah. All right. Okay, anything else you got still going on?
Let's see. Oh, and then the letter that I emailed to you is the resignation of the town attorney. John Custis submitted his resignation with the clear and really kind offer that he would remain in place until a replacement is found. He has a person that I just need to speak with, to make sure. One of the things that has been complicated with the relationship with John is that he represents everybody. So everything was a conflict. The name that he gave me, I want to make sure we're not going to bump into that same thing. So we have, BML's given us names. He's given us names. I want to go through, and before I come back with a recommendation for you folks to interview, I just want to make sure it's not going to be a waste of your time. That's all. So he's staying in place until this happens, and I'm working with him to bring it forward. That's the end, thanks.
Matt, how's the permits coming for the wood?
I didn't hear you.
The permits for the work?
Oh, we have no way to know what the status
They've
is.
been submitted.
Oh, yeah, no, they've been submitted for weeks and they say it takes anywhere between 2 and 6 months. So,
And no construction can start until we have.
correct.
Okay, council comments, Joy, Ray?
No.
Okay.
I just want to say that Ray's house is the only one not a.
Welcome, Thelma.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right, we have a closed session immediately following this. The public, we will come back after the closed session, and during the meeting, there will be no votes taken or anything, so there's really no reason to say. I think there's a motion to go into closed session.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we enter into a closed session of town council pursuant to code 2.2-370 of Virginia Code to discuss two matters. Number one, to discuss the job performance of the town manager as it relates to the 90-day probation period included in the employment agreement. And number two, discuss the disposition of real property located at 23656 North Street and 9 Justice Street, both of which are related to the HRSD transaction by way of information.
Do we have a second? Second. All in favor? Opposed? All right, thank you all.
Thank you all.
Well, I guess.
It's going in.
Yeah.